If health is the state of complete harmony between the body, mind, and spirit, the recent pandemic has demonstrated the ability to remotely achieve the same balance via a massive digital transformation that is underway in India's healthcare industry. Cloud adoption is opening up highways to data that can be used to develop innovative applications with AI and automation, enabling more efficient healthcare practices. In many cases, technology is enabling the pivot from treatment to prevention. The second wave of the pandemic has driven more use of teleconsultations, AI enabled medical imaging, smarter e pharmacies, and personalized treatment. And that's just the front end. On the back end, chatbots are helping hospitals screen patients quickly for their first visits, while administrative workflows, including maintenance of patient records and processing insurance claims, are being streamlined more effectively through machine learning. No wonder then that the healthcare sector is generating the world's largest volume of data. The focus now is on using all of that data to fuel even more innovations, which can help India's healthcare sector address systemic challenges. Today, you will have an inside look into the possibilities that technology has to offer for India's healthcare sector and the routes that key players have taken to achieve positive outcomes. I'm your host, Gautam Srinivasan, and welcome to this virtual discussion on Mint titled Driving Digital Innovation in the Pharma Industry. Joining me on the panel are Sumit Pathak, Digital Workforce Evangelist for the IMEA region at Automation Anywhere. Surendra Mantena, Chief Operating Officer at e-pharmacy retailer MedPlus. Amit Mohan, Chief Operating Officer at GE Healthcare, the leader in global medical technology. Vaibhav Tiwari, Chief Operating Officer at Portia Medical, which is India's leading home care services provider, and Satya Mahesh, Director and Head of Business Excellence at MCure Pharmaceuticals, which ranks among the country's top pharma companies engaged in developing, manufacturing, and marketing products globally. As you can see, we've covered all bases in the healthcare space, from technology enablers, e-pharmacies, and medtech leaders to home care service providers and large manufacturers. So let's enter this operation theater of ideas and insights to understand the trends that are shaping India's healthcare space. Sumit, we'll start with you. Automation Anywhere enables many clients to use intelligent automation to improve the way they work. So how have your conversations with customers in the healthcare space shaped up during this pandemic period?
Thank you, Gautam, and good evening, everyone. And it's great to be here. And quite a relevant question, Gautam. So, if I go back, now we are in wave 3. In some countries, it's wave 4, lockdown 6. So, as Automation Anywhere has global presence, we have seen, depending on which part of the globe you are and how the pandemic is played over there, the organizations have responded accordingly. But one thing which we took upon us when we were faced with this challenge at the start of the wave 1 was, how do we respond to such unprecedented situation, right? How do we basically respond depending on which industry our customers are? And we basically divided that into three categories, Gautam. One was to how to make certain sectors efficient, the others survive, and the other ones to be saved. And pharma, healthcare, hospitals, government, and ministries, they were basically were working towards making that sector more efficient, because just for the nature of the activity, the activities went off the roof, the patient's intake, the inquiries went off the roof. We also saw that at the time, many of our customers who are into healthcare, and when the pandemic was still quite new, and they were trying to get their head around it, that the testing was taking too long. They were collecting the data. That data was then getting provided to the World Health Organization. A lot of manual activity that was taking place. I remember one of our customers was spending that 8 to 9 staff working 24/7, just manually collecting the data and then keying in, right? How do we basically get up the curve, collect that information in more intelligent way, do the data analysis, and then provide that information to the World Health Organizations and the sorts, so you can be ahead of the curve. So we saw the technology getting involved in that way. We've also seen, critical care. When the oxygen was at its shortage, the bots were used. to basically distribute the oxygen levels depending on where it was required. So instead of manually a nurse going and looking in the hospital that which bed or which ward should get the oxygen, it was designed by a bot to basically see if the oxygen supply within the wards or to the patients is as per the requirement. That way, basically taking care those critical hours for the nurses, more where it's required, plus also responding to the immediate needs for the patient as well. So many out of the box, out of thinking, innovative things came about, excuse me, and to respond to these crises, right? And as we say, the crisis gets the best out of humans, and that's where technology will come to basically, force multiply it, is what we have seen with our customers.
Absolutely. As they say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And considering that surge in demand that we saw, it is amazing to see all these solutions that have come up. But again, it brings to focus also the issue that you have to structure the data to get insights out of it. And you have to make sure you have systems and processes in place. Well, let's see how the players dealt with that surge in demand and what sort of solutions they came up with. Vaibhav, let me come to you. The second wave of the pandemic saw severe shortages being reported when it came to hospital beds. Now, during this time, Portia Medical offered oxygen support services, home ICU setups, and nursing services. Now, in the first wave, Portia Medical offered remote monitoring, home isolation, and teleconsultation service. Now, considering the 3x surge in demand during the second wave, how did technology help you overcome challenges associated with, say, resource, logistics, and manpower to not only bolster existing services, but also offer new ones, including a technology-driven chatbot to disseminate authentic information about the pandemic? Vaibhav, I believe you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
Sorry. So first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. Wonderful to be with all of you. If you look at, and I will just give the context of both the waves of the pandemic, because what has happened in that first wave of pandemic, when it started happening, and that time, of course, we didn't know where it will go. The cases were increasing slowly. We were in the midst of lockdown. A lot of other stuff was happening. So, and if you see the advent of digital and advent of technology overall in healthcare in India, both from consumer or patient acceptance as well as from doctor and provider acceptance was not very high. But what we saw in those 4 or 5 months when the first wave lockdown was there, and anybody who was testing positive, governments were very keen to make sure that those patients were taken care of under home isolation. So I would say that if you look at 2020, April to December, or maybe early this year, the technology was here to stay after that. The kind of policies government made around teleconsultation, around e-pharma and things like that, I think changed the landscape of healthcare in India. So I think technology's advent was primarily driven by last year's wave. And what happened this year, and if you see our focus in that area, we supported almost 400,000 patients under home isolation last year. And that was done across the country with many states, with many cities for that. And we worked with many state governments and created this whole platform, technology-driven model where we did doctor teleconsultation, healthcare working, talking to the patients, and so on and so forth. And the second wave, when it came this year, so technology already become a very integral part of how the healthcare was getting delivered. When the second wave came this time, of course, many more patients required oxygen support this time. So then we figured out how we could basically scale that whole operation. Of course, we are providing nursing, teleconsultation, helpline. I think this time what happened, because COVID hit a lot of larger cities, like if you look at Delhi, Lucknow, Mumbai, Bangalore, a lot of those cities, and where many corporate employees were there. So this year, for example, we saw many corporates looking at supporting their employees with all the health helplines, home isolation, COVID support, teleconsultation, those kind of volumes shot through the roof. So there again, technology worked very, very well. All the remote management of the patient, can we use devices to support patients at home? Vital monitoring at home using devices, that became very important. We also launched very interesting solutions around oxygen management. I mean, this time we saw, because there's a major shortage of oxygen concentrators, a lot of companies said they want to invest in oxygen concentrators for their employees. And we ran that operation at the back end for them. What we are trying to do for HUL also, for example, we ran a partnership with HUL, where almost 3,000 oxygen concentrators were being given to across the country for free. And the whole thing was managed leveraging technology and, of course, on-ground presence by us. So I would say that if you look at wave 1 and wave 2, I think it has proven that technology has a very, very strong role to play in healthcare, and it is here to stay. Today, patients' openness and doctors' openness, I think, which is more important, to consult a patient online, give the prescription online, and probably start monitoring patients online and seeing if they are recovering, what support do they require. Of course, complemented and supplemented by on-ground presence, which we provide in patient home, I think has become the norm now.
All
so
right.
what
Were
we
you
call
surprised? But in terms of that, point, Vaibhav, were you surprised to see the response even coming from seniors who were comfortable with the use of technology and, say, remotely interacting with doctors? Were you surprised with that?
Yes, this time, of course, it's surprising in the sense that I don't want to get out anymore if I'm like 60 plus. I think that became the norm in many ways. People are not even getting out for anything. I mean, I know enough seniors, and many of them, almost 25% of our patients are 60 plus. And they will not venture out, come what may. I mean, for every single thing, they wanted support to be provided at their home, and leveraging technology. So many of them are probably 50-60% of them became very well versed with technology because of 2 COVID waves. I think so. That's something which has really helped us as a country to accept that as the norm. I think that's the biggest change which we are seeing now. So.
A true black swan event which has changed consumer habits and made technology more mainstream in the healthcare sector, especially in terms of uses. So let's see how the use gets diversified. Surendra, I'll come to you. The e-pharmacy market in India was projected to grow more than 7 times between 2019 and 2023 to around $2.7 billion at a staggering compounded annual growth rate of 65%. But considering the sheer number of players entering this space, how do you see it evolving from here on? And how is MedPlus as an omni-channel retailer with over 1,800 stores serving 3 lakh plus customers daily, using technology to attract customers in tier 2 and tier 3 markets where logistics bandwidth is limited?
Right. So thank you, Gautam. And good evening, everyone. So the e-pharmacy space, I would say, the growth in e-pharmacy actually started even before the pandemic. The pandemic kind of catalyzed the growth of the space significantly from where it was. But several things within the ecosystem of e-commerce have started coming together over the last decade, right? So first thing is smartphone penetration, right? It has become ubiquitous. People have become comfortable using smartphones to not only seek entertainment, to look at videos, but also to shop across tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Along with that, the penetration of internet, giving everybody access to perform these sort of functions has also become ubiquitous. Then changes in financial ecosystem, right? The financial payment system, people ability to pay online, online instruments, digital instruments. So all that has also come together to enable more e-commerce to happen. So along with that, I mean, if you look at the broad vertical, across the recent e-commerce players, they've also kind of familiarized people and given people a comfort shopping online. So e-pharmacy has built on those tailwinds, right? Then the second thing is the product fit. If you ask me, medicines as a product is extremely well fit for an e-commerce kind of this thing, right? So when you are buying a product, if you are assured that what you see is what you get, right? And quality is kind of more or less certain, because it comes in a pre-packaged form, and if you buy a medicine of a particular brand, you know what it is you're getting, right? There is no variation across MRP. I mean, regardless of whether you buy it here or buy it somewhere else, the MRP across the country is the same. Plus, these are not products where you have to touch and feel to kind of evaluate what the quality is. And also the choice of the product is not really, you were not going online and selecting a particular product. It's more defined by what your prescription says. So all of these make, the product highly suitable for a e-commerce kind of play. So
Absolutely.
this, yeah, together with the the pandemic, kind of putting difficult for people to access or go out and go to the pharmacies has kind of catalyzed the entire space. And because
and
of the convenience,
that's where I bring in the point, because considering you
the
have so many
seamless
players in
nature,
this sector,
in which customers can interact with the pharmacies, connect and shop, I think it's something that will grow very fast.
All right, let me bring in a point about the fact that since there are so many players in this sector, do you think the back end management is going to be the hero when it comes to using technology to service customers? Because it's going to be about predictive analytics for inventory management, and when you have the medicines which people have, it's going to drive more customer loyalty towards you. So do you think in your space especially, it's going to be the back end management where technology is going to provide a more important role?
You're absolutely right, Gautam. See, the technology here in pharmacy is, if you want to leverage technology, it's all in the back end, right? Putting out a website and getting customers to the website and placing orders is the easiest part of the business. What if you can make products available to customers, right, at a time, at a place, where they want it, and make it available within a reasonable amount of time at a great price, then you have the right product, right? Right business. So how do you manage that? You manage that to having extremely good supply chains. Logistics, managing your logistics is more than anything else the key function where you have to excel at to be able to deliver on this promise, right?
Absolutely.
So you can, it's the way you can build trust in the mind of the consumer is by delivering on this again and again, right? So you make a promise and you live up to that promise, then the customer is going to come back and trust you.
Absolutely.
And because of the way the industry is structured, right, for medicines, it is a fixed margin kind of structure. So I mean, you can't really go build a business just on discounting. There is a limited margin, by which you go out there, and regardless of whether it's an omni-channel player like us or a new pharmacy player coming to the market, they have to operate within that discount structure. So I don't think anyone is going to have a competitive edge purely on pricing in this game.
Absolutely,
so
and that's the differentiating point. And that's the differentiating point, because as you mentioned,
on the operations part.
Absolutely, especially as you said, right, from e-commerce perspective, if you can lob all the use cases in together, this is not a situation where different players can play the discounting game and get away with it. This is something where actual real supply chain management comes into focus, and we'll discuss more about that in detail. But let's also get in some other perspectives, because we've covered some different spectrums in terms of use cases. Let's see how it works from a manufacturer's standpoint. Satya, I'll come to you. From a manufacturer's standpoint, the pharma sales and marketing model mostly thrived on face-to-face reach of customers, doctors, and healthcare professionals in promoting the brand. So as lockdowns started, so did restrictions to visit healthcare professionals during the pandemic for your sales and marketing team. So how did you leverage your digital transformation efforts to improve sales productivity? Satya, I believe you are on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for being me, for calling me onto this. In the initial stages, we also had the same shock, like, all of a sudden, we have realized that, the one model where the reach and frequency, which has always worked for pharma across the world, all of a sudden has been challenged. And we were really not knowing what to do. In the initial stages, we actually have, for about a month or so, everyone had worked from home, and what is most important for us is improving the skills of the people, and helping them actually reach out to the doctors a little later when the whole lockdowns come down. That's what we have done in the initial stages, the pandemic in the first wave. But then later on, we have realized we have an opportunity to reach out to the doctors to the other digital channels. Not many companies have actually created the digital channels well in advance. Only after the pandemic, we have realized that this is one more way possibly we have to reach. Though digital has been there for quite some time in pharma. So two things which have actually come, which are very, very important is one is about the internal customers, trying to actually upscale them in terms of their skills. And the second one is reach and frequency to the doctors. Of course, we immediately upped the WhatsApps of this world, and the video calls. All those we have actually tried, but there were too many of those things which have actually. Too many people are reaching the doctors with the same thing. But the ones who have got the benefit are those who actually had fair amount of relationships with the customers, and also the ones who are giving very relevant information to the doctors at that point of time. So that's what had actually differentiated a lot of people. Then thanks to the Zoom, so many webinars and all have happened. Once again, here, every organization had done some webinars or the other on the Zoom, which was available. But however, the ones who had actually understood the requirement of the doctors, the kind of limitations that the doctors have got the biggest benefit. Now everyone has understood that possibly digital is the best way to go about, and the kind of time that you get airtime you get with the doctor is slightly better if you are very relevant to the doctor.
So what changes have you made when it comes to, say, CRM then, in considering how the things have changed? What changes have you made in your, say, CRM structure to deal with your customers?
Sure. It's once again a very simple. 20/80 rule works very well in pharmaceutical industry. And a typical medical representative would have about 150 doctors and all that. So it's all about reaching out to 25 to 30 most important core doctors of yours, who are the biggest prescribers. So the connectivity through the video calls or the Zoom calls have really, really worked in the initial stages. And then we have understood what is the requirement of the doctors, and then we have started conducting the webinars which are very relevant to the doctors. So that's what had actually cracked. And in fact, the frequency, which was earlier, our face-to-face frequency used to be maximum of 3, with some important doctors, possibly even 1 was very difficult. But with the digital channels, our frequency has improved very considerably, and our leadership teams all across the sales have also started reaching the doctors. So there are more joint calls and all that. So the information which was reaching the doctors, the kind of relationships that we had, has been really useful at that point of time, and giving the right information at the right time and through the right channel has really worked for us. Not only for us, for all those who had fair, as I said, the success depended on the kind of relationship you had pre-COVID era. So those were the ones which have actually worked. And for those who have identified the right topics to be discussed and to invite the doctors for those meetings and all that, if they are relevant, if they are meaningful to the doctor, I think they have really, really worked.
All right. The relationships were there. It's just technology has helped you bring a richer side to that. Fair point. Amit, let me come to you. Sorry, go ahead. Satya, you were saying something?
Yeah, the one which got impacted was reach, but as I said, it was more of an 80-20 rule, where it's 20% of the customers giving you 80% of the business. The meaningful engagements with the customers did not really suffer much.
Okay, fair point. And that's where the nature of this relationship also defines how things move forward. And that brings to an issue as to how the face-to-face interactions getting replaced with online interactions will shape this relationship going forward. And we'll see more use cases emerge. But meanwhile, Sumit, let me come to you. How do AI-powered RPA solutions help in improving productivity of sales teams in companies looking to make sense of the data from the ERP and CRM systems?
So sure, Gautam. So let me answer this in a few different ways. I think there's some background noise there.
There is. We'll try and address that. If anyone from whom the background noise is coming, if you could mute your mic, that will be great. I think the noise is gone now. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Colin. I would just like to detour a bit and then come to your question. When Satya was speaking, one thing which came to mind, that when you basically start you becoming customer of your own product. So from efficiency perspective, Gautam, when the vaccination came about to basically the dose 1 and dose 2, and I've got both the doses. I've gone to the hospital where the solution has been basically deployed, and you see why important the solutions like a cloud is and intelligent automation is so useful, because to have a setup to basically accommodate the spike in terms of registering the customers, the patients who doesn't have the records in that particular hospital where you're going to get the jab, plus making sure that all the paperwork is taken and then it's basically inputted into a system, right? And then that is again retrieved seamlessly when you go for the dose 2, right? All of that activity, if you think, has got a lot of manual activity. You need to train the people to basically get that going. When you're going as a customer and you're going there or to basically get the jab, you're a bit nervous at the same time. So you want a good experience and seamlessness in the way you're getting from registration to getting the jab, right? So all of that, which we have seen using the automation, RP as a technology and AI having a capability of scanning and reading the data, was basically used to scale up along adding the cloud with it to basically take the benefit of scaling up in a short duration of time, right? So I just wanted to highlight that how it has been. And second, let's not forget that while we have been talking about telemedicine, which is great, I think there's more acceptance. My parents are 70 years old, and they've also gotten comfortable with that sort of way of getting consulted, which is great. What we've also seen, another side effect of pandemic, was that the hospitals and the healthcare were losing staff as well. So the idea is that how do you make most of available resource, and how do you identify that those resources are being used where they are needed the most, right? So like patient inquiries, getting the paperwork done when they're getting registered and all, right? So in a supply chain, onboarding a new vendor because there could be a new request which is coming through. So how you can automate those steps, which can be predominantly done with the help of software bot, and then the resources which are already under pressure because of the high demand, plus also their nears and dears one getting sick and they're away from the workforce as well. So to basically getting pressed from both ends, and that's where the technology like automation was and with the cloud was used to basically provide that seamlessness.
All right. Hopefully, when Amit joins back, we can get his perspective on this as well as a medical technology solutions provider. I believe Amit has joined us. Amit, if you can hear me, you've heard us discussing about how the nature of the relationship itself has changed, especially from a marketing and sales perspective, when face-to-face interactions get changed to an online interaction. So from, say, the perspective of a solutions provider, again, how face-to-face interactions between medical reps and doctors or business executives and suppliers or distributors, they were limited during lockdown. So how did GE Healthcare solve this issue using technology?
So thanks, Gautam, and thanks to Mint for giving GE Healthcare this opportunity. We really appreciate this. To answer your question, I think
I believe we have some issue with Amit's connection, but we'll get his views as soon as he's back and the connection is stable. Meanwhile, Satya, you were talking about the supply chain. Let's also look at digitizing that supply chain and the challenges to overcome. Now, AI can enable faster clinical trials. It can reduce errors in supply chain management, improve transparency in finance and accounting. How do you see things changing for the end consumer of your products as more inefficiencies get rooted out? And what kind of revenue streams do you see big data opening up for MQ?
Of course, the supply chains in the initial stages have been fairly well managed because at any given point of time, you would always have approximately about 30 to 45 days of stocks which are there in the market. But then actually the whole forecasts have actually gone where the kind of surge that we have seen in some of the medication and all that. Of course, with the knowledge of what kind of medication which might sell in this kind of pandemic, and what kind of supporting medications that sell, we actually could manage those forecasts and actually hump up the production. That's what is the first thing that not only us, virtually everyone has done and you hardly would find the kind of shortages for such. Now, of course, there are shortages of remdesivir and all that, but that was more of not because of just the usage, but because people wanted to buy much, much more. Especially in the first wave, the chronic therapies, where people had purchased at least 2-3 months of advanced medication, is also one of which had actually disturbed our forecasts and the whole supply chain. But as I said that we ourselves would have approximately about a month's stocks which would be there in the market, would have about 30-35 days. We could really manage it. But what is now looked at is virtually on a day-to-day basis. We see how much is the especially at our CNF agents and especially at all our depots and all that, how much we maintain and what is the forecast which are being done virtually at those levels, at the state levels, so that we are able to actually manage them very efficiently in our sales and marketing. For us, any loss of sale is definitely a loss of sale. You can't actually recoup it because of that. So we have been very efficient in actually managing those in terms of going up to the last mile details. Then there is one more thing which we all have invested. Majority of them have invested during this first phase is a lot into analytics. We have actually upscaled our data warehouses and within a short span of time churned the data in our business intelligence tool, so that the last mile, last place also knows what is the stock which is going to come in the next few months and all that. I think that's how we all have managed it very efficiently.
All right, that's a great case study for anyone watching to see how things have panned out. I believe we have Amit back with us. Amit, to take the question again to you, which is, as we approach it from a sales and marketing perspective, we saw the difference in interaction where it was no longer face to face, but it was more remote. And it's not just between, say, medical representatives and doctors. It was also between business executives and suppliers or distributors. So how did GE Healthcare leverage technology to address this issue?
Hey, thanks, Gautam, and thanks, Mint, again, actually. I apologize. It looks like I'm in a very unstable network today. Technology can do that
worries.
to you.
We can look at it from an infrastructure issue perspective.
Yeah. So fair enough. I think GE Healthcare has been at the forefront of digital transformation even before people start talking about it. The concept of remote monitoring, tele-ICU, we started seeding that idea way back in 2002, 2003, when people said that you are talking way ahead of time, and we realized that. So when pandemic hit us, and given the fact that GE Healthcare has got a very strong, large play in the critical care segment, what we realized was we did an assessment, and I remember we were in a meeting with Mr. Kant of Niti Aayog, and we were trying to assess the situation in the country as to how many ventilators were there during the first wave, at the beginning of the first wave. And across industry, we were surprised to know that the number of ventilators in the country were only about 10,000, whereabouts of 10,000. And 20% of them were not working. That also brought us to the question of that there was like the critical care infrastructure focus as a society. It was never there in place. But to cut a long story short, and not to take those as an excuses, we ramped up our services organization to ensure that all those ventilators, which we can actually repair in the field, we quickly go in there. But given the fact that, just to imagine, the person has to travel from Bangalore to a town in UP.
You mentioned remote fix and how you help customers.
So remote fix. So we actually serviced and repaired a lot of ventilators over video call, providing online tools, and those were tools which were very proprietary to GE. We actually were able to embed in those equipments given the static IP of the equipments, and we were able to actually play with those equipments sitting remotely. Obviously with the permission of the customer. Second thing, what brought in, and I heard people talking about teleconsultation webinar and all, and there was a lot of fatigue at the end of it. I completely agree to that. But second thing was that while equipments were there, people also needed training. The clinicians needed training, the healthcare staff needed training, and there was no people nearby to train them. So we had a portfolio solution called the Digital Expert, which was again a proprietary tool we had. We actually started deploying them through an app.
All right, that's an interesting case study as to vertical integration of technology. And that's where we see the ingenuity of companies coming in as well. You see the portfolio of technology available with you, and then you use that to make sure that diverse use cases are addressed. But we've been talking about technology a lot. Let's talk about the human element as well. And Surendra, I'll come to you. The human element is a key factor in healthcare. And as automation augments human capabilities, how do you retain that personal touch even as you deliver, say, precision in prescriptions and supply of medications?
Yeah, absolutely. See, personal touch to some extent can be replicated virtually also. In the context of a pharmacy, when a customer comes to a pharmacy, the kind of help that he's looking for is help, obviously with his prescription, but also information around those, prescription products, prescription medicines. So information is much more easily provided through an online channel where we have information, about, when to take that medicine, kind of doses, side effects, things like that. That's help, that sort of help can be provided very well online. Second, in terms of having somebody to talk to, with chat boxes or having a call center, people still have the ability to connect and interact with pharmacists for any expert advice or any other information requirement that they have. But given having said that, I think we still have seen a lot of customers still being comfortable just going to the store, talking to the pharmacist, establishing relationship with, with that pharmacist, and actually enjoying and liking that experience. So I don't think the transition to e-pharmacy is going to happen like everything is going to go online. I think the omni-channel play that we have is going to be highly relevant here. What we have seen is although people order online, around 70% of the people who order online with us actually go to the store to pick up their medicines, which we initially thought was a little surprising. But I think that's where the human touch, having that trust in somebody, having somebody to talk to, somebody to relate to, matters a lot. So anyone who is able to provide that sort of seamless experience, right? Where you identify with the brand, you trust that brand, you see their stores, you are able to interact with those people. You're also likely to shop, online with the same sort of brands and same sort of players online as well. So
Absolutely.
this is in context of a pharmacy. Obviously, when it comes to doctor consultations and all, there are certain kind of consults which lend themselves to virtual consultation, something of acute nature, a fever or something like that. But anything a little more complicated than that, personal relationship with the doctor matters. And even the virtual consults are going to be with doctors that they already know or identify with or have a relationship with. And that's how I think it's going to be managed.
Absolutely. And it's about improving that relationships. But I'm glad that the conversations in healthcare are now building more and more on looking at it from a customer journey perspective. Let me bring in Vaibhav as well. Vaibhav, your services involve more human resource. What's your thought on this? India's healthcare system, it shifted to a remote model almost overnight with teleconsultations for non-urgent visits and remote monitoring services for, say, mild infections of COVID-19. So is this switch to healthcare from home here to stay, or is it evolving still? Vaibhav, I believe you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
So the way we look at it, actually, this is going to be, so that there's a need for healthcare with, of course, with clinicians, healthcare providers, and so on and so forth. And they get assisted by technology. So in many ways, the way we look at it, technology is an enabler. I'll give you some examples for that. So I can do a teleconsult for, so we've been running some programs with a few insurance companies, for example, and we run a what we call infection control helpline. So what happens is the patient is having normal fever, the flu-like symptoms, they will call us and we will talk to them and teleconsult, do a doctor visit to their homes and see if they can get cured at home if required, right? And almost 25% of the patients who would have gone to hospital for admission, say 2 years back, are not going today because they're getting treated either as a combination of teleconsultation as well as home visits, right? So that is something now that became multi-channel approach, both inside hospital, outside hospital, and teleconsult, right? So it's a three-way thing which has come together now. Of course, the much lesser stress on hospital system. It's much lesser stress for the patient. So, and of course for insurance company as well, because patient who really doesn't need to go to the hospital doesn't finally go, right? So those kind of models are going to be more and more prevalent. So what you say as severity 1 cases, if they can be treated, severity 1 cases could be treated a combination of technology and home visit. Maybe severity 2, severity 3, you should go to the hospital. And again, post the hospitalization, discharge, post-discharge, a lot of things can be done at home. I mean, we are talking of doing dialysis at home now. So where enough and more people are going for dialysis to the centers, we are saying, can we do peritoneal dialysis at home? During this crisis, the most vulnerable segment is basically oncology patients, right? And many of them don't want to go to the hospitals. And we have done work with them. In fact, we partnered with MCure also to do iron injections at home. So a lot of those things which are there, for which you are going to the hospital and probably had a lot more manual part of it, is getting done as a combination of home and technology. And I would say that's what is here to stay. So technology will enable, technology will assist, and of course you have to do medical support. You have to have specialists, you have to have people, you have to have a nurse on ground, a physiotherapist on ground. All that has to happen also, right? So it's a combination of all three, but technology as an enabler, especially in services, has become much larger now than what was 2 years back. And this looks like even after wave 2, it looks a lot more irreversible now. So if you look at data, which is very interesting, after first wave, before first wave, the number of teleconsults which were happening in the US, and after the first wave got over and the situation became till normal, people almost went back to same number of teleconsults which were there pre-COVID wave 1. But post-COVID wave 2, that thing is very different. So I would say that post-wave 2, this is a lot more irreversible. Leveraging digital, leveraging technology is here to stay. And you see governments investing in it. I mean, e-Sanjeevani is a big investment from government perspective. And for a country like India, this really makes a lot of sense because our ratio of doctors to number of citizens is still very low. Number of beds to citizens is still very low. So from that perspective, for India, technology helps a lot, and I think is here to stay and grow. And there's a room to play as a combination of all three. That is, you go to clinic and hospitals, we come home, and of course we leverage only technology. And I think all three will grow. All three are here to stay. That's how we look at it now.
Absolutely. That's a preview of things to come, and it also opens up unique collaboration opportunities because, as Vaibhav said, they work with MCure as well. I'm sure more such opportunities could open up. But since Amit is back, Amit, from intelligent ultrasounds to patient monitors with early warning scores and CT scans in a box for COVID situations, technology has transformed the way healthcare services are being delivered today. So what's the next level in patient services and operations going to look like? Could you give us a preview of innovations that are slated to improve patient outcomes?
So we experimented with a few things to enable our response to COVID as a society. Given the fact that I'm in a very patchy network, I'll cut to the chase. So people were going after RT-PCR report in wave 2, where the reports were going to come back only after 2 or 3 days. And some of the people could not have waited till then. The second course of action was getting the CT done and getting your CT score. But the constraint what the hospitals and the medical facilities were facing, where there were too few radiologists, and even the radiologists who were there were like they're fatigued with round the clock working. So incidentally, GE runs an EdisonX program, which is basically a startup accelerator program, and we had a cohort group wherein we had a solution that the radiology machines, the CT machines.
Fortunately, I think we've lost connection.
The radiologist.
Let's see if we can get Amit back. Yes, Amit, go ahead.
The radiologist sitting in a kind of a command center used to read that and then feed in that report back to the institutions, and the turnaround time was like about an hour maximum, wherein people were not even getting to get their reports in like 36 hours. So that was one thing which we innovated with and worked very well with a lot of institutions, a lot of hospitals. So the second thing is like, and I'll just take a cue from my Putia colleague here actually, while they've done a phenomenal work and they continue to do a phenomenal work in home care. Our tele-ICU solutions was very concentrated around ICUs in the hospitals. And then we partnered with some of the institutions, some of entities which wanted to get into the home care space, not from the Potias domains perspective, but more from the connected care perspective. And some of the hospitals also said that, okay, patient is fine to go back home, doesn't really need to be in a hospital ICU setup, but they still need a care. Can we release the hospital beds to more severe COVID patients? So what they did was that they started setting up, I would say, an optimized ICU setup at home. And we enabled with technology and their equipments to be connected back to that hospital command center, which we actually proprietary call as a clinical cockpit. And there were clinicians and intensivists who were sitting there and completely observing and monitoring those things. Let me give a corollary to that, in the sense that this is not our solution. We are solution providers. We enabled partners to do that. We don't sell that as a solution, but we have all the ingredients to make that one. So those were the two big ones which we said that which we used to help our society at during the second wave predominantly.
All right. So that's a preview of smarter healthcare, things to come as providers themselves start looking at how they work and how they can service customers more efficiently and solve problems. And considering healthcare is a key sector and it affects all of our lives, it's great to see all these initiatives making a real impact. But since we've run out of time...
Gautam, if you may, just give me 30 seconds more, since I have a stable internet now. I just wanted to make this point. The whole technology of reaching out to home and setting up those clinical kind of setups at home also enabled
it looks like in the race for internet bandwidth, we seem to have lag behind. I believe we have you still on, Amit. If you can use the next 10 seconds to complete your answer.
So what I was saying was that also helped hospitals. The last solution, what I was talking about, also helped hospitals to reach out and serve more and more patients. And we know what kind of a situation we all were in as a society, where hospital beds were not available and infrastructure was like kind of just giving in. So with that, I'll take a pause and hand it back to you, Gautam.
So even with that constraint, you managed to compress, your talking point and explain to us the unique use cases and how things are progressing from here on. But since we have almost run out of time, Sumit, let me come to you for the last question. Better healthcare is one of the world's most promising opportunities, with McKinsey theorizing the possibility of a lift to global GDP by a staggering $12 trillion beyond 2040 if better healthcare is provided. Now, considering the indirect benefits to people and society in this context, are we going to see barriers which existed to embracing new technological solutions coming down faster now as more successful case studies of use emerge? And if so, how can companies balance agility with responsibility using technology?
Gautam, I think that question is better answered with all the CIOs, CFOs, and CEOs are sitting here, right? So I think for any transformation or any change, the mindset is the biggest problem, right? And that has been addressed. And I think if I'm not wrong, Surya, you mentioned about it, that wave one, people went back to before, but in wave two, we have seen that there is a stabilizing factor in the way the digital channels are being utilized from telemedicine perspective. So Gautam, from that perspective, things have happened. The mindset has changed. The organizations are very open. They know the need of embracing technology to respond to such needs. And the way I see it is that, the wave one was more of reaction, wave two is consolidation, and now we are better prepared to basically, if any certain wave, another wave come through, we are far more better prepared than we were before. And that's happened as a result of, as I said, the learning which we had over the last 18 to 24 months, plus the capability of technology and embracing it, like what Amit mentioned in his conversation as well. So I think it's the right place, right combination, and right attitude towards it.
All right. On that note, let's wrap things up. I guess if good health is our main capital asset, healthcare backed by innovation seems to be the ticket to grow its return on investment exponentially. And with that, we come to the end of the discussion. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for sharing with us their insights on driving digital innovation in the pharma industry. And thank you also to our viewers for tuning in, and of course to Automation Anywhere for partnering with us for this series. I hope everyone has a healthy day. This is Gautam Srinivasan signing off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
You too.
You too. Bye.